What's up guys, MTG Matt for you, and today we're evaluating the lessons and learn cards we get from Strixhaven. So learn is this new mechanic which either lets you discard a card to draw a card, or you can grab a lesson from your sideboard. So lessons are specifically named as such in on the card itself, as we can see here with Mascot Exhibition. And we're going to evaluate these cards together now. And I think the best way to start evaluating these is by starting with the lessons, because judging how good the learn cards will be is completely dependent on whether the lesson cards are any good, right? So because of that, let's start right away with Mascot Exhibition. It's a 7-mana sorcery lesson in colorless, so every deck can basically play this. And you create a 2/1 white and black England creature token with flying, a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token, and a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. So you pay 7 mana and you get a total of, let me check, 9 power and 7 toughness on the board, distributed among 3 bodies. Is that any good? Well, on its own, certainly not. Nobody would ever put this into his main deck. It's just really, really bad. As a lesson, I think as a one-off in your sideboard, it's fine. If you're a control deck, or even if you're an aggressive deck, you can put learn cards into your deck. And then in the late game, if you've got 7 mana lying around and you just want to close out the game, you can grab Mascot Exhibition and pay the 7 mana in any deck and get, you know, a good board that really can make an impact. So Mascot Exhibition, I think, is a fine card. But only really as a one-off. So, where we have the Mascot Exhibition. Hello? Where is it? No. There it is. So, Mascot Exhibition, probably like a tier 3 card. I think it's an okay lesson. But I think it's not that crazy good. You probably just want one of these, but not more in your sideboard to then grab it in late game and, you know, get a board out. It's just fine. It's not super great, but I think as a one-off in a sideboard, you might see this card being played. So yeah, this is probably like a tier 3 card, I guess. It's just good value packed into one card, accounting for the fact that it's not in your main deck. So maybe it's like a tier 3 card. And it's like the only mythic lesson out there. Next up, we got Confront the Past. You pay X and a black for a black sorcery lesson and choose one. You turn target planeswalker card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Or you remove twice X loyalty counters from target planeswalker and opponent controls. I think the Confront the Past is an amazing lesson. Situationally, you can get it to you know, just remove a planeswalker from your opponent, which is actually pretty easy, because twice X loyalty counters, if you like pay 3 mana, you already remove 4 loyalty counters, and if you pay 4 mana, 6 loyalty counters should be enough to kill the most planeswalkers, and in that case you pay 4 mana to remove a planeswalker. And if you don't have such an effect in your main deck, then you're just happy to grab it from the sideboard to kill a nasty planeswalker. So that's really cool. But also, it gives you the option to get a planeswalker back from your graveyard to the battlefield for 1 extra mana. Also situational, because you grabbed it from the sideboard. So I really like Confront the Past. It's still though very, very specific, because it should really only probably go into decks that also run planeswalkers. Only running this as a lesson to deal with planeswalkers. Not sure if you want to do this. So Confront the Past, where do I have it here? I think it's also like a tier 3 lesson card. You know, with all these cards, the thing is, if they were usual cards, I would put, like the mascot card, I would put it into like 0 playing constructed, and the Confront the Past, I would put it in tier 4. But they all get pushed because they're not in your main, that you can just grab it from the sideboard, and that is what makes them good, right? It's good that they don't clog up your board, your main deck, and because of that, they're just conditionally very nice. And because of that, I'm tending to rate them more favorably. So Confront the Past, Also like a tier 3 lesson, maybe tier 4, depending on the meta and the deck you're playing it in. So yeah, this is okay. Is it tier 3? I'm actually thinking the mascot I'm putting tier 4 and the Liana tier 3. I think this is way better this way because the mascot I don't think is going to see too much play. Next up we got a favorite of mine, Academic Probation, 2-mana associate lesson in white. Choose one. Choose a non-land card name. Opponents can cast spells with the chosen name until your next turn. Or choose target non-land permanent. Until your next turn can't attack or block and its activated abilities can't be activated. So really nice card here for a control deck. You can either shut down a creature of opponent for a turn or a planeswalker, or if you have either very good knowledge of your opponent's deck, or you even run effects that let you see your opponent's hand, you can basically like foretell when your opponent is going, what kind of spell your opponent would like to play next turn, and then you just play 2 mana to say, no, you can't do this next turn. So Academic Probation, a really good lesson, I think. It's also at least like a tier 3 lesson. Because it's very flexible, and as always, I just love cards that reward you for knowing your opponent's deck or knowing the metagame. So Academic Probation I really like. Next we got Teachings of the Archaics. 3 mana lesson in blue. If an opponent has more cards in hand than you, draw 2 cards. Draw 3 cards instead if an opponent has at least 4 more cards in hand than you. I think Teachings is also pretty nice, again because it's a lesson, right? You just grab it from the sideboard, and then at the worst it's a divination, but if you're really behind your opponent you can draw 3 cards for 3 mana, and that's just really great, right? It's just what you need to catch up in a late game. So Teachings, again, I think just a really good lesson card. It's also like tier 3. Next we got Illuminate History, 4 mana lesson in red. Discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Then if there are 7 more cards in your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. This one I'm not too sure about. It's nice if you have graveyard synergies, because then you get a body on top, right? And you get to, you know, cycle through your deck. That's pretty good. Again, the thing is, I think the card is fine, and I can't really like evaluate them badly because they're just sitting in your sideboard. They're never gonna clog up your deck, so you just grab it if you need it. And because of that, I think I always have to trade all of these like at least tier 3 cards, because they will never be, like, if you play best of 1, they will never be a downgrade to your deck, except if all the learn cards are bad, but we're going to evaluate that. And Illuminate History, it's fine. I think it would be one of the lesser play lessons cards, because you need to have cards in hand to make this worthwhile. So I think I'm putting this in like tier 4. It's not as universally useful as the other things here, but then again, you know, grab it from the sideboard, you cycle through your deck, you get a 3/2 body. Wait, what is actually, is it discard? Yeah, it's discard. Huh. So it actually helps you get to 7 more cards in your graveyard. I think this also needs to be a tier 3 card, right? So you play a learn card, you get this from the sideboard, and then next turn you pay 4 mana to just get rid of the bad stuff in your hand, draw a bunch of new cards, get a body on the board. I think this is fine. You'll probably just play it in a control deck. I think it's tier 3. My instincts tell me just rate these tier 3 because they're never a downgrade to a deck. Next up we got Basic Conjuration, 3 mana lesson in green. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library. In a random order, you gain 3 life. This one I don't like as much. I don't think green necessarily needs this type of effect. You have great hinges and usually enough value. This only makes sense if the green learn cards are really good. So I'm putting Conjuration like tier 4 with like an asterisk, because I don't think this effect is universally good, and I mean, if there are good green cards that just learn with no downside, then this is of course also a tier 3 card, but we're gonna see that. Alright, so we got through all the rare and mythic rare lessons, so we're getting to uncommon common. So first of all, we got here Containment Breach, 3 mana lesson in green. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. If its mana value is 2 or less, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. I think this one is actually really good. It just sits in your sideboard. It's artifact or enchantment removal, which you usually don't want to have in your main deck. And in green, I think it's like a tier 2 lesson because it just sits in your sideboard. You realize, oh, my opponent has a Great Henge, or my opponent has an Embercleave. I just grab this from the sideboard, destroy it, that's it. So, Containment Breach for me is like a tier 2 card. Next time we got Necrotic Fumes, 3 mana lesson. As additional cost to cast a spell, exile a creature you control. And you exile target creature or planeswalker. Also very, very good. You need to have the right deck because you need to have a creature of your own to be able to play this, but it's very good removal. Still, you exile the stuff and it's creature or planeswalker, so I'm also putting this into tier 2. Next time we got Mercurial Transformation, 2 mana lesson. Until end of turn, target non-land permanent loses all abilities and becomes your choice of a blue frog creature with base power and toughness 1/1, or a blue octopus creature with base power and toughness 4/4. This one I don't really like. I don't think people are going to use this. It's still a tier 4 because if your sideboard isn't too clogged up yet and you're in blue, you know, put this in, why not? But apart from that, I think it's actually quite bad, right? Because think about lessons this way. Whenever you learn, you have to decide, is a card in my sideboard better than a card I could potentially draw from my deck? Because with learn you can discard a card and draw a card. And I can't imagine a world in which Mercurial Transformation is going to be better than a card from your deck, unless the specific situation requires or demands that you have such an effect, right? So it's at least tier 4. I think probably none of the lessons are going to be unplayable because they're not in your main deck, so it's just fine. Next I got Academic Dispute, 1 mana instant red. Target creature blocks this turn if able. You may have it gain reach until end of turn. And then you learn. I think this is... Oh, we actually got through all the lesson cards. Okay. Now we're getting to learn. No, wait. Oh! Oh, the, damn it. The order is wrong. Whatever, it's fine. Academic Dispute, our first learn card here. Target creature blocks this turn if able. May have it gain reach on another turn, and then you learn. I think this is a very good learn card because you don't necessarily need to your opponent to have a creature. You can simply put this into your deck as a kind of cycling deck in a mono red aggro deck, and you know, just choose your own creature to make it so it can block this turn on your turn, just to learn and grab something from the sideboard. So Academic Dispute I really like. I think Academic Dispute is a tier 2 learn card, or I think if this is going to be good, Academic Dispute is the thing we're going to see a lot of actually. Maybe even tier 1 because I could see mono red decks running this. Just to cycle through their deck and occasionally kill a creature your opponent controls. Yeah, and it just costs 1 mana, so it also casts Makeshift triggers. Yeah, I'm putting this like tier 2. But we're not done with lessons yet. We got a red lesson here, start from scratch, 3 mana lesson, choose 1. Start from scratch, deals 1 damage to any target or destroy target artifact. This is just fine. You can destroy an artifact, which is relevant because of the Henges and Embercleaves of this world. And occasionally you can find it from your side to deal just 1 damage to remove a creature or finish off your opponent. Start from scratch is okay. I would give this... Where do we have it? I put this line in tier 4 category. I think that's not too great. It's just fine, but not more. Now lesson we have is Reduced to Memory, 3 mana lesson in white. Exile target non-land permanent its control creates a 3/2 randomized spirit creature token. This is absolutely amazing. You can just grab unconditional removal from your sideboard. And yes, your opponent gets a good creature, a 3/2 as like if you're in a control deck, giving your opponent a 3/2 is not to underestimate, but it's still a very good card, right? You can remove anything. And if you're in a control versus control matchup, you don't really care, because in a control versus control matchup, usually can't even use your creature removal in the early game. So then it doesn't matter that one is getting a feature spirit token, just use a glass casket on it, for example. So this for me is almost like a tier 1 card. Maybe more than a tier 1 card, and more than a tier 2 card. So I really like that, actually. I think this is one of the tier 1 lessons. It's just really, really good. Next, we got Spirit Summoning, 3-mana lesson. In lower colors, create a 3-2 randomized spirit creature token. It's fine. You can probably grab this in red to just get a body on the board if you have nothing better to do. And I think it's just fine. 3 mana for a 3-2 is obviously not good, but if you just get it from your sideboard, it's okay. So I think this is actually fine. I'm putting this in tier 3. I think this could see some play in like red aggro decks. Is this tier 4? No, I think this is tier 3. Next I got Elemental Summoning, 5-mana lesson in Prismatic colors. Create a 4/4 blue and red element creature token. Basically the very same as with our last one, Spirit Summoning. So this is also just a tier 3 card. Next we got Fractal Summoning. You play X and then twice Quandrix Hybrid Mana. You create a 0/0 green and blue Fractal creature token and you put X on cornerstone. I think this one is especially good because the ceiling is infinite, right? If you're playing a Quandrix deck, which just draws a bunch of mana in the late game, break this on your sideboard and create a 7/7 and 8/8. It's just very flexible, so I am giving this summoning also a tier 3 judgment, so to say, right? I think there's also a tier 3 lesson. Next I got Pest Summoning. Create 2/1 on black and green pest creature token when this creature dies to gain 1 life. This one I don't like as much because I don't know. I think black probably has better stuff to do with his lessons, as we've seen already here, especially black and green. But then again, if you can still find place in your sideboard, remember you have 15 slots in the sideboard. This could be fine, but for me this is one of the worst creature summoning sideboard spells. Just getting two 1/1 tokens is, I don't know, it's not that great as the other ones, I would guess. Mostly because of the color combination. I think this color combination cares about other things more, like removing stuff or reviving planeswalkers, or you know, removing enchantments or artifacts, but if you can find a place, I don't know, maybe still put this in like tier 3. Yeah. Next I got Inkling Summoning. Create 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. Probably they're all like tier 3 cards, right? Next we got Introduction Annihilation. Another colorless sorcery. Exile target non-permanent is controlled as a card. For me, this is absolutely a tier 1 lesson. Right, you exile anything, your opponent draws a card, who cares, you get rid of the most scary stuff. Anything for 5 mana you can play it in any deck is really powerful, so for me this is a tier 1 lesson. Let's say they got Introduction to Prophecy, 3-mana lessons, try to draw a card. I think this is like a tier 2 lesson, because there are colors that struggle with card draw, obviously, so something like mono red, right, or mono white. They can just grab this from the sideboard and have nothing better to do, and really find something valuable because it's got scry onto it, attached onto it. So it's just universally good. So for me, this is like a tier 2 lesson. Next we got Expanded Anatomy, 3 mana, also colorless. Put 2/1 when counters entire creature, it gains vigilance on the end of turn. This one, I think it's like a tier 3 lesson. You can use it to finish off your opponent with a creature you have already on board, but for me it's like the other summoning spells. Next I got Environmental Sciences, 2-mana lesson, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand and shuffle it into life. I think you could grab this in the early game in a control deck, right, to make sure you get your land drop and also gain some life, which is nice. So Environmental Sciences, I would put probably at like tier 3 also. It's just universally useful, so I put this at tier 3. Next I got Dream Strix. And we've actually got to the learn cards now, so got through the lesson cards as you can see, and I think overall they're quite useful generally, and because a lot of them are universally useful, and they're not in your main deck, I think they're just really good. Okay, so we got a learn card here, Dream Strix. 3 mana, 3/2 flyer. When it becomes target of a spell, sacrifice it, and when Dreamstrix dies, learn. So, first off, I don't think the sacrifice aspect is that big of a drawback, because at 2 toughness it basically dies from anything. To be fair, it can also die from your pump spells from your opponent, which it usually wouldn't without this sacrifice drawback. But all in all, I think it's not that relevant actually. I think it's still just a 3/2 flyer for 3 mana. And then when it dies, you learn. I'm not too fond of this card because I think learn cards just need to be good by themselves or need to be very low costy. And 3 mana I think is just too much. Also, in what kind of deck would you put this? In a control deck at 3 mana, you have better stuff to do. And I just really don't like this one, so Dream Strix, I don't know. Maybe it sees some play, but I highly doubt it. I don't think this is a good learn card, so I don't know. I just don't like this one. Is it going to see some play? Maybe. If learn is really, really good, it could see some play as like a 2-of. Because the thing with learn is, if the lessons are valued to be good enough, then you probably can't be too picky with the learn cards you can put into your deck, right? So this might see some play, but I actually doubt it because it's just expensive. Let's say we got Sparing Regiment, 3 mana and Shaman in white. When it enters the battlefield, you learn. And whenever you attack, put a 1 count on target attack creature and untap it. I think this could go into Yorion decks just because you can flicker it and learn multiple times. Apart from that, it's pretty terrible, right? Paying 3 mana to have an enchantment that gives you attacking one of your attacking goods +1/+1 and you untap it. It's pretty bad, but you know, you pay 3 mana to get a specific card from your sideboard, and then you have an ongoing effect. So maybe if you value learn highly, I think this could see some fringe play, at least in Yorion decks, because they can flicker it. Next we got Poet's Quill, 2 mana artifact equipment, and when it ends the battlefield, you learn. An equipped creature gets +1/+1, has lifelink, and you equip for 1 in the black. I think this card is actually super good because first off, it's cheap. Just pay 2 mana, you learn. You can, by the way, also flicker this with Yorion, right? So that's pretty good. But the equipment is actually relevant because you know, you can either play this obviously in a control deck, and in control deck lifelink is super nice because your life total is what determines whether you're going to win or not. And giving a creature lifelink, tokens you generate, or your 1/2 creatures you can actually have in the deck, giving it lifelink is super, super good. So Poet's Quill I really like, and even in like a aggressive deck that has black in it, you know, just having a learn card that then turns into a useful equipment is quite nice. It's okay. So Poet's Quill I really like, and it's also not a legendary artifact, so you can use it multiple times. Where do we have it? There we have it. So Poet's Quill for me is like a tier 3 learn card, maybe like a tier 2 learn card. I would put this like tier 3. I think it's quite useful. Next we got Null Professor, 4 mana 5/4 3/4 duel with trample, and when ends the battlefield, learn in green. This is probably one of the best learn cards out there. You get a decent body, right? 4 mana 5/4 trample. If a green deck wants to have learn, they're gonna use this, so I'm gonna put this at tier 2. This is definitely a very good learn card. So if you wanna have learn in your green deck, you definitely put this in there. It's just a big beer that lets you learn, so that's pretty awesome actually. I really like that. Next up we got Retriever Phoenix. 4 mana to the Phoenix in red with flying and haste, and when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, learn. And as long as Retriever Phoenix is in your graveyard, if you would learn, you may instead return Retriever Phoenix to the battlefield. So this one's quite interesting. You can get it repeatedly back from your graveyard. And this could be played in mono-red aggro. Right, 4 mana is a lot to ask, but it has haste and it's repeatable. And you know, having repeatable threats is what mono-red wants. Also, we've got the other Phoenix from Fears Beyond Death for 3 mana, which you can also get back from your graveyard. And it's quite costly, so that's the downside. But if you have a Retriever Phoenix in your graveyard and you pull this up, you cast this, instead of learn, you get the other Phoenix back to the battlefield, and then you swing in for 4 in haste. So Retriever Phoenix, I think, is very good, because also you can always just choose to learn. You don't have to bring the Phoenix back if you figure that something else from the sideboard is more useful for the time being. In the late game as a mono-red aggro, you might cast Retriever Phoenix and, you know, get the mascot exhibition to get a full board. So Retriever Phoenix I really like, and for me Retriever Phoenix is also like a tier 2 learn card. I think it's actually quite good. Next I got Igneous Inspiration, 3 mana sorcery. Deals 3 damage to any target and you learn. I think you can play this in a mono-red aggro that 3 damage to any target, can remove creatures, can also go face, can hit planeswalkers, and then you learn on top. If you're playing like a Retriever Phoenix deck, you want to have a lot more learn effects. So Igneous Inspiration I really like, and I think it's also like a tier 2 learn card. Next time we got Divide by 0, it's 3 mana instant. Return target spell or permanent with mana value 1 or greater to its owner's hand, and then you learn. Huh. This one is hard to evaluate. So it's a 3 mana counter spell or a bounce spell. And on top you learn. Is that good? You can bounce any permanent also. Except for lands and tokens. You know, not being able to bounce token is actually a big downside, because bouncing a token removes it. That's always good. Huh, this one is hard to evaluate. But I think this is actually good. I would put this in like tier 3, because think about it. In like a control deck, you can bounce something and draw a card, which is very good actually, right? If you're playing like in a Zoris control deck, for example, you can bounce something with Divide by 0, and then from the sideboard grab, you know, an Introduction to Annihilation, or you grab a Reduce to Memory, or you grab a Teachings of the Archaics and Academic Probation. So you just got a lot of options. Where are we? So I think like as a 2-off, I could imagine this being played in the main deck, because it's flexible, and I think it's actually a good card. Let's get your Eye Twitch. 1 mana 1 Eye Bad with flying in black, and my dice learn. I think this card is absolutely amazing. Probably one of the best learn cards. It's simply 1-drop, it's even a flyer. I mean, 1/1 flyer, sure, we'll take it. Can block anything, that's really good. And when dies you learn, so this is such a nice turn 1 play in a control deck, or even in like an aggressive deck. I think this is good. You get a 1/1 flyer, which you can, you know, buff and pump, and then when it dies, you learn it replaces itself. I really like this one. I think Eye Twitch is a tier 1 learn card. You can put this in aggressive creature decks, you can put this in control decks. I really like this, I think it's really good. Next I got Professor of Symbology, 2 mana 2/1 core Cleric. When it's enters the battlefield, you learn. Same one with this one, you get learn on a very cheap body, and I think learn is probably all going to be about how can I fit learn into my deck without sacrificing too much, right? And if you're playing a creature deck like a mono white deck and you want to have access to learn, let's put in Professor Symbology. Sure, it's a 2-drop and you might sacrifice some tempo, but think about it, you can get this back with Lurus and have repeatable learn effects. You can flicker this with Yorion if you like, because I think you could also play this in like a control deck. And for 2 mana you get to learn and you have a body on the board. So Professor Symbology for me is like a tier 2 learn card. I think the iBet guy or iTwitch, what is it called? iTwitch is still better because it's just 1 mana. But you might not necessarily play black. So Professor Symbology, also I think a really good learn card. Let's look at Overgrown Arch. 2 mana 0 for plant wall with Ephemer. You can tap it to gain 1 life and you can pay 2 and sacrifice it to learn. I think this is an outstanding card if you're playing green and you want to have access to learn and you're not an aggressive deck. That's the restriction, and you're not an aggressive deck. This card is absolutely amazing. For 2 mana you get a 0/4 blocker that can block a lot of stuff. It survives a Fervent Champion that's pumped up with the Dwarf pump spell with +2/+0. It can survive that, right? And then it can repeatedly gain your life, so you can just block and then tap it at the end of your opponent's turn to gain a life, and then later you just sacrifice it to learn. I think Overgrown Arch is it might be tier 1, but the only reason I'm putting it in tier 2 is that there aren't really... Right now we don't really have controlling decks this green, except for, well, would Sultai Ultimatum play this? It's a good question. Would you play this? I think at least in a sideboard, right? In a sideboard I could imagine this. I think it's just really, really good. As long as you're not playing an aggressive green deck. Or an aggressive deck with green in it. I don't know. I mean, if this were in white, this would be amazing because white is a more controlling color than green. As is, maybe this is just tier 3 because I think green really restricts its use, but it's an excellent sideboard card and I'm really thinking highly of this one. Let's go to Arcane Subtraction, 2 mana instant blue. Target gets -4/-0 until end of turn and you learn. Yeah, I think this won't see any play. This actually won't see any play, it's just too bad. Next we got Transition, 2 mana sourcing, gain 4 life, learn. It's like 2 mana, draw a card, draw a specific card. Gaining 4 life, pretty good in a control deck. Not sure about this one. This might see some play if you want to have a lot of learn effects. I'm putting this at tier 4. Then so we got Enthusiastic Study, 3 mana in red, target creature gets +3/+1 and trample on the end of turn and you learn. I think this could see some play. Because the buff is okay, but most importantly it gets trample and then you learn to get something from the sideboard. So Enthusiastic Study for me is like a 3-star learn card. Or like tier 3 learn card. Let's get Field Trip, 3 mana source in green, search your library for a basic forest card, put that card on the battlefield, tapped and shuffle, and you learn. Yeah, this is definitely a tier 2 learn card. You ramp and you get a learn, so I think you can comfortably replace some cultivates in your deck with this one without really sacrificing too much. It's just a very good card, and this might even be tier 1 because Sultai Ultimatum is a tier 1 deck, and I think it can easily replace some cultivates with this one. So this one might be a tier 1 learn card. This got First Day of Class. Man, I love this card. It's 2 mana instant red. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control this turn, put a 1/1 counter on it, and it gains haste until end of turn, and then you learn. So this synergizes, for example, very well with the Retriever Phoenix because you get the effect and then you learn and get the Phoenix Bat and gets the 1/1 counter, for example. Yeah. You know, that's just a neat effect. But I think First Day of Class has a lot of potential, mainly because the haste effect and because it replaces it itself. So for me, it's a tier 3 card. It's a tier 3 card, and because you need to time this effectively, but I think the Effect is very nice. It's low mana value, just 2 mana at instant speed. And it can really pump your board in a turn and give creatures haste that normally wouldn't. And then you learn to grab something. So for mono-red aggro, probably not useful because you don't need such an effect, but maybe Gruul could use this or other decks. I'm gonna put this in tier 4 because I think the use case is going to be very fringe. But look out for this card in the future because I think the effect is powerful enough that it's actually got quite some use. So we got Guiding Voice, 1 mana sorcery in white, put 1 count on target creature and you learn. I could see this being played in like Silver Quill aggressive decks which also want to have Magecraft triggers. And then you have a 1 mana sorcery that replaces itself and you can get Magecraft triggers and pump a creature a bit. So I'm putting this in, I think, the tier 3 category just because of the learn aspect. Maybe it's tier 4, something like that. It's also targeted, so yeah. Tier 4. I'm putting this in the tier 3 category. Just that the card on its own is very, very weak. But maybe if you want to have a lot of Magecraft triggers, it's pretty good. Next time we got Hunt for Specimens, 2 mana sorcery. Create a 1/1 black and green past creature with when this creature dies, you gain 1 life, and then you learn. I don't know about this one. I mean, let's think about the learn cards you could grab in black. You could, obviously, you can grab all the colorless stuff. You can get the Planeswalker spell. You can get the stuff with the Inkling. I don't know. I don't like this one too much. I think it's going to see 0 play. Next we got Pop Quiz, 3 mana instant in blue, draw a card and learn. I think it's definitely going to see some play. It's divination on instant speed. Except for you draw a card from the deck and then you learn. And you might wanna even, you know, in blue, if you're playing like Prismari, you might even want to discard a specific card from your hand into your graveyard to use it otherwise. And then learn is allowing you to discard that card and then draw a card. So Pop Quiz, definitely going to see some play, and for me it's like a tier 2 card. Then we got Rise of Extus, 6 mana sorcery in Silver Quill hybrid colors. Exile target creature, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard and learn. I think it's going to see 0 play because it's just way too expensive. And the final card is Study Break, instant, tap up to 2 target creatures and learn. Now, this could see play in control decks, right? But if you're in white, you might just rather play Professor of Symbology, for example. Let's say you're in a Zona's control deck. You're probably going to play Professor of Symbology, divide by 0. What else could you play? Maybe Sparing Regimen if you're a Yorion deck. And then, you know, what else would you play? Pop Quiz. There's already plenty of learn cards. You might even not need so many learn cards. So then Study Break, it's questionable if you want to put this in your main deck. And I actually doubt it. So although it can really slow down an aggro deck actually, but I don't see this being. I'm putting this in tier 4 to be fair, because learn might just be good enough, but and effect is okay, but actually I think it's going to see 0 playing constructed. Tier 4, tier 5. I'm putting it tier 4. Yeah, those are all the lesson and learn cards. I'm really looking forward to this mechanic. I think it's going to bring a lot of variety to standard, a lot of spiciness, a lot of decision making, which is really cool. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy this content and look forward to the next review video. Hey there, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this kind of content and want to see more fresh decks and standard meta decks, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it, and I see you guys soon.